Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. My name is David Arnold. I'm one of the senior trainers here at Workamajig. Today's topic is about media and how to best handle media in Workamajig. I'll start out uh, saying, how do we set it up so we can track media? And from there, we'll look at actually the purchasing a little bit and the billing of that media. Okay. If you have any questions, a little bit of housekeeping, any questions, type those into the question area and I'll get to those as appropriate. If you have any further questions or wish any training, feel free to send a ticket to support@workamajig.com and we're happy to set that up. Okay. All right. So let's start out. Media, okay? Uh, we know you all usually do that. You may be using a third-party purchasing program, such as Freewill or Bionic or Galeforce. I'm not going to cover how to use those, but again, a little bit more of how we would set up Workamajig to best deal with media. Okay, so the first part is, of course, we have in our system set up that first off, we're just going to say, hey, we use media. And so that's actually saying we use media. And that way we can get both the insertion orders and broadcast orders into the system and decide what the prefix will be for those. Along with that, we slide over to the left here. And again, system setup, admin system setup under media will appear after that transaction preference. And this is where we'll set up broadcast items and print and digital items. Okay. And I'd like to just throw something in right here for especially with the third party people. If you have digital buys and you need a start and end date for that buy line, it starts on Monday, ends on Thursday type of idea. That will, instead of being a digital item, we will set that particular vendor up with an item which would be a broadcast item. So broadcast items allow us to have that start and end date on that particular order or that particular buy. Okay. Or buy line. Okay. So since it's a broadcast item, that means we would have to set up that vendor as a station as opposed to a publication. And I'll show you where that is set up. But I wanted you to know that we're able to do that, but we bring it in as a broadcast item and it'll automatically create a BO as opposed to an IO for you. Okay. And this will work with all of, Freewill, Bionic, and Gale Force. Okay. Right. So anyway, so again, what we're setting up when we do the broadcast items is, again, we're just setting it up with an ID and an item. So whatever you're buying. And the other part of this is, of course, when you get the vendor invoice, where does it post that expense? And where does it, when you put that on a client invoice, where does that post in your sales area? So in your income area. Okay. There's some other settings for taxes and things, but again, that's just kind of general setup. So anything that you would buy and you want to split out, you would set that up again online, outdoor, out of home, right? Whatever those items are. And again, if you were doing outdoor and you consider that to be more timed like a commercial, a TV or radio commercial, then we would want to set up outdoor, not here under print and digital, but we'd set it up under broadcast. So again, when we do that, so again, I have that for out of home, it'll pick that up and it'll create that BO. But again, the target is on my vendor. I need to make sure that I set them up with a station as opposed to a publication for that purpose. Okay. All right. And again, further questions, feel free to ask. Either here or uh, sorry, here or again, send a note to support. All right. So that's really the main things that we would do in setup here is just broadcast item purchase items. Okay. Uh, One of the things that is kind of universal is we'd often set up a project to track these things. Okay. So in the project, what makes it different? Okay. So I'm just going, any project, it's for the client. That's pretty straightforward. Generally, we can have a task. It's not completely necessary, but some people will have at least one task in there. More than that, I think can get, we could have multiple tasks, but some of the third party tools don't really look at tasks. So again, they would just come in against the project themselves, and that's absolutely fine. Free will is one of the exceptions, or if you manually enter in things, you can actually target a specific task if you needed to. But in general, it's the items that define it. So again, we can already tell that you bought radio versus TV versus, out of home. We can already see that. So again, you don't always have to have the task, but some people do have that setting. So again, we may have to use that. All right. The next thing we're going to do is in the project settings. And in this one, we're going to actually want to set up, for example, the project type. Okay. So I would recommend for the one you set up a project for your media buys. Okay. Some would have a yearly project for all the buys for that client, but then they would may also create, hey, we need Super Bowl ads. That's a little late now, but we need Super Bowl ads. That might be a special project. And it's okay to create a special project for that set of buys. But their general rah rah, we're a great company type of advertising that they may do for you, at general advertising, I would probably set up a yearly uh, project for them. And to help with identifying these and reporting in other places, I would set up a project type under media buy. Now, project type is again one of our systems set up under global list. We'll see project types, and it would just be one of the types that you have. Again, to, to track these buys. So again, I can separate either include or exclude media buys from much of my reporting based upon this project type. Okay. But always a good idea. Kind of label them all together so I can report on them together. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is also create my project status, usually an ongoing, or maybe I may put in media buy, but the ongoing, because again, this is a long-term one. I don't want it to be in production because that may confuse it with other projects. So I'm going to put this long-term one ongoing or something like that. I can set that up again under the global lists under project status codes. And we're going to say, okay, I set up this one. It's called ongoing. And it's going to be the project is active. If I want to see it, if I want to hide it, I keep it inactive, but usually it's active. And what if you don't track time against these projects? Some people do, some people don't. It would just be, do I allow time entries and do I allow expense entries? Some people will actually lock this status. So they, again, people can't change it into something else except for people who have the right to do that. Okay. And there you go. So that could be your settings. And again, whatever you name it is up to you. Again, the status ID and then a status name. And again, most people will be seeing the status name. And again, we can use this to filter things in and out of reporting. Okay. Now, another setup in the project that will help us to for down the line, of course, is under billing. Okay. So first off, again, I'm going to have my billing options. And within the billing option, because most of the time my project is going to be a time and materials, right? I get a vendor invoice, I bill it, right? That's what I'm going to use, right? So they tend to be time and materials. If you're doing fixed fee, kind of a rarity, but again, it can be done. But one thing we want to do is we have something that may help you in the billing process is we can set up a billing manager. And the idea of billing manager is I can send my work or the project to a particular person to review and then say, yes, it's okay to generate the invoice. Okay. Another way that we can help kind of that billing process is perhaps set up a billing group. And the billing group is, again, just a way of lumping like things together so we can separate them out and say, hey, I want everything that goes to this billing group to go out. And then I'll set up again, the worksheet to basically use that when generating those worksheets for review. Okay. Uh, the billing manager is just a drop-down list of everybody who's, a staff member in the system. So again, you'd probably put your your media buyer, right, or your media person, manager in charge of this, and that so they again everything would kind of go to them. The billing group is a way of again lumping like things together under the billing process, and that is actually here under again system setup, billing options, and we have billing groups, and you can again, create any number of groups. I created one for media. So again, my media projects will kind of get lumped together and sent off to a particular person. So it'll help me in filtering and then sending out to the right people. Okay. Okay, I'll take a little pause. That was a lot of information in a quick second. Again, just more of that setup. How do I set up my project and to get the most benefit and kind of clear media all by itself? Doesn't interrupt your typical billing process. It's just a way of kind of separating those out. So again, because it usually is kind of separated out, so the proper people can see the billing project, the media projects versus the your time and materials projects or your normal production projects. Okay. All right. So the next thing we would recommend, again, this is my year-long project that I've created. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to go to my estimate and I want to set up an estimate. And this would be more like, what is my plan? Okay. What is the plan I'm going to have for this client? And we're not going to look at specific stations or anything. What we're going to do is say, I'm going to buy some digital. I'm going, my plan, what is the client's budget? And in this case, I'm saying the client's budget was 40K. Hey, over the course of the year, please spend $40,000, right? That's the budget we have. So I'm trying to target that. So once you've worked out your plan, right, we're going to come in and create an estimate for that. And again, I'm going to buy some digital. I'm going to buy some out of home. I'm going to do some interactive. I'm going to do some cable buys. Okay. So whatever your buys are that kind of add up to that grand total, these will work on markup. So again, you're going to put in the net you're going to purchase and then the gross, and that'll kind of do the markup. As you know, media tends to be on commission, but not always. We can handle those types of things as well. But for the most part, again, we're going to put in the net and then the gross to arrive at a total that would be billable to the client. Again, I'm separating these out to say digital, again, whatever items or what the mix we're going to do for that client, not the specific stations or anything like that. Okay. Does that make sense? All right. So this would go through the normal process, get approved, and that becomes my budget. And as you know, with any other project, right? Once we get an approved estimate, then we have the budget. Then we can start to look at what's the budget. Once orders start coming in, once expenses start coming in, those start to show up here, and we can start to see, what's left on it. Again, over time. Again, this would be a snapshot, right? Currently on the project, these are the numbers. If I'm looking for timing, right, what happened in each month, that would be slightly different. I may look at transactions or something else. But again, that's more a separate one. This is more that overall, how's the project doing? Where are we at on the budget? Things like that. Okay. Because we have that budget also when I start to look at this, maybe in my projects board, again, is it bumping up against the budget? Am I within 30%, 40%, 10% of the budget? I know there's a problem and I need to go look at this one. Okay. And we can even do that by item as well, as you know. Okay. So does that part make sense? Okay. I think, again, the idea is we're setting it up kind of like a normal project, but we're putting in some little hooks in there to make it easier for the media people. Okay. Again, as you know, the team, usually it's the media buyer would be the ones that are on the team. Again, if you want to track time against it, make sure they're tracked. You have a task and they're putting time towards that particular task. And whether you bill that time or not, that's something different. But again, you want to make sure they're on the team so they can see the project so they can put buys in against it. Okay. So now let's talk about the buys. How do we get those into the system? So as you know, and I'm sorry, I don't have all the connections in, but I do know, again, we do have certain connections. We have a connection to Freewill or right or Strata, if you know it by that name. But again, Freewill uh, is able to sync, or when I say sync, it's able to send their buys into our system. So the orders would come across, the vendor invoices would come across. Those are done via Strata. We have a Strata link tool built in with Freewill that you basically click the button, certain date ranges are there, certain items are going to come across, and certain estimates. Uh, that's its own training session. But again, we're basically sending over orders into Workamajig from Strata or from SBMS or Freewill, however you want to name it. Those are being sent into Workamajig. And where we track those will be under media. And when we go to today media, we'll see those as media estimates. Okay, so let me get down to here, media estimates. And again, I don't have any of them. Their numbering system, this is where they would come up. And again, I would have an estimate ID. And for SBMS, what they do is they give us the same estimate code that you is in there, but we just append it with a B or an I or a P, depending on what type it is. Okay. But again, these are manually put in. I don't have a paid connection to them. But the idea of a media estimate is really that it's a way of lumping those buys together. Now, would I use this if I'm doing it manually? Probably not. I'm going to just rely on the project and the project estimate because the media estimate itself has no further play in the system other than as a way to put things under an umbrella. Okay. It's just a way of grouping those buys together under kind of one name. Okay. That's the project. So again, we don't really need this if we're doing it manually, but this is the way that Freewill brings their buys in. Okay. So first they bring in the buys in, and then again, once you connect those vendor invoices to the buys within SBMS, you can send those across as well. And because of the hooks in, it'll, match up and, you know, make the appropriate amount billable to the client. Okay. Our other two integrations for media, Galeforce and Bionic, they use a slightly different one. They use the media plan. So what they do is again, there's some setup for that. Again, if you are buying those, we're happy to help you in that setup. But the idea is what they'll do is it will send across the buys, it'll create a plan. It'll get a plan number, and it's usually associated with a project. Okay. And again, that's why we say create a project. No matter what you're doing, do a project. We have very robust project reporting. And so, again, if you're doing reporting on media, again, always have a project. Bionic and Galeforce actually require a project. So, no task, but it definitely requires a project. Okay. So, what they do is when you bring in, oh, need this one? Okay. Their integration presents a media plan. So it has a number to it. It'll have what is the item that you're buying, right? So is it a magazine, newspaper? Is it TV? Is it cable? Whatever those items are, again, there'll be set up, and that's what the plan will come across. Now, it sends it across, but it's not quite in Workamajig. So what you would need to do is you click on the plan and then you basically, oh, I'm sorry, actually up here, you say release orders. And when you click release orders, sorry, I've released all my orders. There will be a list of all the plans that have buys that have not been made into orders. Once you say, yes, go ahead and select it, release the orders. We basically, for each line, we're going to put an order number on it, and then this would now be visible within Workamajig. Okay. The nice thing is once you've done that once, sent that buy across, anytime you send it across, there's already hooks to this particular order, right? And so it'll just automatically go in. So you only have to say generate the orders or release the orders for a brand new orders or brand new plans. Or in the case of a plan that's already in the system, if you had added a station, for example, you add, the plan already had KXYZ, but now you have KABC in the mix that just got added. In that case, you'd have to come and release the orders or that line for the KABC buys. After that, it's in the system. All you're doing from those two programs is saying send it over to Workamajig, and it automatically will come into Workamajig. Any updates will be automatically updated. When the vendor invoices connected within those and they send over the vendor invoices, those are automatically connected. Again, there's no need to release them after that initial release unless you add a new station or publication, or new station actually, or new entity into the buy. Okay. All right. That being said, so that's how I get my orders in with the third party. Of course, I can always manually enter things in, and that's actually what I'm going to more show. There's really no difference in orders and orders and order, so to speak, so no problem with that. And then vendor invoices, same thing. Again, we're going to do a vendor invoice, connect it to the buy lines. And again, that works the same way. It's just, again, how does it get into the system may be different. It's imported in, or I'm manually doing it. And of course, with the vendor invoice, you can kind of mix and match them if you like. Some vendors are in, for example, Galeforce, and they're sending those across, but there may be vendors that you don't do that, or they're using a credit card. You can use those systems in Workamajig to manually enter in the vendor invoice and tie it to those particular buys. Okay, whether it's a vendor invoice or a credit card charge. Okay, make sense? Okay. All right. Now, again, let's go back to my project, so to speak. So, I think I got all the was in the wrong tag. So let me get back to the project. Okay. So when those buys come in, again, I had some buys that I put in here. Here's the media buy. Again, they're associated with the project. So those are going to come in against the project, and I'll start to see those populating in the budget. Okay. Now, this kind of before we get too far in the expenses, maybe let's go a little farther. Okay. So the idea, of course, is that order is in the system, right? It's being tagged to the project. So it's coming in here. And of course, the order is billable if that's the route you take. Okay. I'm going to talk about billing in a bit, different workflows. But again, how do we kind of handle these vendor invoices? If it's automatically coming in from those third parties, again, there's not much for you to do other than to see that comparison from budget versus actual. Again, open orders versus uh, vendor invoices coming in, and we'll start to see that. Okay. Manually, when I create the order, again, that's pretty straightforward. Not a lot of people doing the manual, although I do want to talk about this. So when I come in, I say, I need a new broadcast order, right? And I may even come from here where I'm saying I need a new broadcast order. It's going to make it easy for myself. I'm going to create it from here, or I could actually create it from my budget, but probably from here. And the idea is that I can then pick my vendor, right? Big media company. What station is it, right? I don't have a media estimate because I'm manually doing this. It's already tagged to my project because I'm creating it via my project. What's the flight dates? Again, I'm just going to pick some flight dates to be in here. Oh, it's usually not broadcast there. Okay. Do I pre-bill? Okay. Just let you know, we have the ability to do pre-bill at gross, pre-bill at net, or do commission only. I'll give you a heads up. So for freewheel, we're able to see in the estimate if you set up the client to say we pre-bill the client at net, right? It's just a kind of a straight pass through. Uh, the orders will come in that way. Okay. For Bionic and Gale Force, it's actually the numbers you send us is the numbers we take. So if there's settings within those two items to basically say this is a commission only style, it's basically it makes the commission zero is what it does, or if you have differences in commission, right? And that basically they'll send us the same number for net and gross, and so that means you're basically pre-billing it at net, even though it says pre-bill at gross, the net number and gross number are the same. Okay. The commission only is more, again, it's you're just taking care of those buys, and there wouldn't be a vendor invoice. You're just going to bill out the commission part to them. Okay. All right. So when I click that, again, creating the lines, I'm going to put in a date. Since I'm doing it in my system, I'm going to have a task for it. Okay. Uh, it's already tagged to my project. Again, because that station or publication already has an item associated with it, that pulled in cable. And for that, I'm just going to go ahead and I have it set up differently. But, I can say, whatever that net, whatever that gross is, again, I can set that up and just say that's 250. So it'll kind of, does a weird commission amount, right? Or a markup amount. Okay. This would then go through an approval process and again be ready for a vendor invoice to come in against it. Okay. Now, okay. So let me go ahead and ask, is there any questions on, how do I get the buys in? Again, we're only done the order part. We haven't done the vendor invoice part. Okay. Prisma. I'm not sure what Prisma is, but I don't think we do have an integration for that. Again, if they have a way to get for any other, third party software that you're using, if you can get an Excel sheet, there is an import that we can do for buys, right? Uh, import the broadcast orders or print orders, insertion orders. Okay. Okay. Does Workamajig have a process for insertion order reconciliation? For me, that tends to be, again, the vendor invoice. When I put that in, I'm going to show you that in just a second. That would really be the reconcile at that point in time, if you're manually doing it. If you're using the third party is your media buying tool. Use their tools to get all that information. We would recommend that. We would have the insertion order, we'd have the vendor invoice. If there's a difference in those, we can see those. Okay. Um, I have a question for the materials due field. Again, that was kind of old school now, right? You usually log in, and once you place the order, it's bought, right? Materials due is a field that, I have to upload the file by this time. And so that's all it is just making sure that on that particular buy period that you have the files uploaded to the client or the vendor so they can make sure that it's placed properly. Okay. So again, there's a way to set up that station to say, oh, their materials due is like 7 days before drop, right? And so then 7 days before that, you can see, hey, which ones do I need to upload files for? And you can see that. All right. Okay. So the last bit I'm going to do is actually create a vendor invoice. Again, that's pretty straightforward. Again, if you're doing the third party, those will probably automatically come in. But otherwise, you're going to get that as an email. You get the PDF from the vendor. And that would just be a matter of I say, I need a new vendor invoice. I'm going to pick my vendor. And again, big media company. I'm going to go ahead and say, what's the invoice number on that? Okay. What's the invoice date? When do I want to post it? I don't need to worry about the project unless I wanted to, because I know it's going against a particular project. And that would be, sorry, I always forget what I'm doing, MBE. They'll shorten it up. Okay. There's the project. Any description I need to, it's okay that I just, again, make this very simple connection. When I do next, the system is going to give me a blank one, but I can actually come up here to the lines and the system recognizes that there's purchase orders, insertion orders, and broadcast orders for this particular vendor. I know that I have a broadcast order for them, so I'm going to go ahead and say broadcast order. Now, this has already been filtered to say, well, show me any bylines on or before today, right? There's a lot of bylines in there, but it's already pre-filtered it to be, again, on or before today, which would be typical, right? And so then I have here's my media order that I have on that project. I'm going to go ahead and select that off. And then this is where your reconcile is. Again, I see in my vendor invoice, what is the price of that? Okay. And I ordered 1,000, right? 850, sorry. I ordered 850. And what's the vendor invoice for? Right? Is it for 600, 700, 800, 800? 900? What is it? And so this is where you guys would kind of stop and you need to make a decision as an agency. Again, what should I do? If it's 850, pretty straightforward. Some people, if it's 849 and 85 cents, they stop and they go talk to the buyer and saying, what's the problem? What's the difference? Okay. Some would say if it's within 10%, like if it, if it's within $20, yeah, we know it goes up and down, runs a little different, whatever it is, that's fine. I'll just take it. Right. But again, that's choices you guys need to make internally to decide what, right? Should it be, do I stop here and go talk to the buyer about this vendor invoice is different than what we bought or what we ordered. Okay. But otherwise, again, if I just select it off, it's for the right amount. I just hit save. It's going to close that line. What I didn't pre-bill this. It's just I'm just connecting it. And so whatever this is for, the net and the gross, this is what the billable amount would be. Okay. If I had pre-billed this for, let's say, 800, then the amount to bill in this case would say 200. That makes sense. Okay. Because I didn't bill the full amount. This is giving me a chance to bill that difference. And if it was a negative, I had pre-billed, then it would have a negative billable amount in here to refund to the client if that's the way you guys work. Okay. I'm just going to leave it as this so we can kind of move on. This has its own approval process. Again, who's the approver? Again, there's some pre-settings for that. Again, not getting into that here. But again, your normal AP side of things, however you have that set up. If you wanted to say, oh, I need to send this to a specific person, right? Then you should be able to select them from the list if it's somebody different, and that person would get it in their bell up here, client invoices to or vendor invoices to approve, and then they would be able to approve or reject it depending on what it is. Okay. All right. So there's my vendor invoice again. Pretty straightforward on getting those connected. Like I said, third parties will automatically connect these things. Some of the changes you may see is an update to the order so it can match if you're doing bottom line invoicing, things like that. So we do these automatic functions with the third party to maybe edit the orders to make sure that the vendor invoices connect properly. Okay. Okay. And the question again, in the net amount when I match that, so let me go back to another one. Let me just do another broadcast order and select a line. The question is, if I order the net amount, right, and the invoice amount is different, can I change that? Yeah, I mean, you can click into that and say, okay, this actually came in for 20,000, and then the amount to bill is still saying 22, but do I accept that or do I change that? I mean, again, that's more up to you guys what you would do with that. Or again, do I stop this to make sure that my buy is the same? Okay. If this came in for less, for example, let me go ahead and just cancel this and come back in. Okay. And I select it off. And let's say, for example, this is less than the 240 and I say it's for 200. The system is going to leave this buy line open for the extra $40 uh, to come in. But if this is the last one, we want to make sure that you check box the close, and it's going to say it's closed. Now, in this case, you can see that I had actually pre-billed this line, and because it came in for less and I had pre-billed it for 400, it's going to, on the vendor invoice, say, okay, I'm going to give you back $66. Okay. So that's how it kind of handles that. If it was for more, it'd do the same. It'd put the positive side on it. Okay. And so the idea is I'm closing the line. This is the last vendor invoice I'll get. It's for something different, but I can go ahead and bill that. But I can also just click into it and say, don't bill anything, right? If I want to change that, right? So I change this to, for example, 200 again. And it says, okay, do you want to bill this differently? Oh, that's weird. Okay, usually I'm going to be able to change the amount to bill to zero. Might have changed that in a different location. Okay, I'll check on that one. But normally I would be able to change the amount to bill. We might have had an update that kind of changed that where it's back into the vendor invoice to make a decision on how much to bill. Okay, but that's the idea is that again we can kind of set up if it's different. it's okay. The rest, that difference will be in the vendor invoice. All right. Oh, let me cancel that because I just have this one that's connected to that. And again, posting it is just, again, where things post right in the general ledger. Okay. And it doesn't need to be posted in order to do the next, which is the billing. Okay. All right. So, of course, the most important part is getting the billing. Okay. So, what do I recommend for billing? All right. Or I guess I should say, are there any questions on getting the expense side in, right? That AP side, the buys into the system and the vendor invoice connected to those buys? Based on the price. Okay. So the question is, I have a 6 month flight, and that's one line at 6 months, and I keep getting vendor invoices in. So as I said, when I attach that vendor invoice, if it's for less, that order remembers. So for example, if I ordered $400, right, and my first vendor invoice is in for 100, the next time I get a vendor invoice for that order, it'll come up and it says, what's the open amount? 300. And I apply that next vendor invoice for 150. And then so the next time it comes in, what's left? 150, right? So we keep track of how much is still open on that line. It's not until the vendor invoice exceeds or equals the rest of the open net that we'll close that buy line. If you feel that you need to because it's such an extreme or you extended the timing that it would need a new order, for the third party systems, we automatically create those lines. But for manual, you would, if you wanted to match, you would have to manually go into that order and add an order line for the amount that's changed. Okay. And then when you bring the vendor invoice, you can connect it to two lines as opposed to just a single line. Okay. All right. Billing. Okay. So if that's all the questions for the AP side, I wanted to get into the billing. Now, what I'm going to describe is absolutely the easiest way to do media. Media buyers can do what they want. AR can do what they want to, right? They kind of get it in sync. And so then what we're doing is, again, each can keep doing whatever they need to do at the time, but the billing is not so much impacted, or what the client sees is not so much impacted. So the workflow I'm going to provide you is kind of what I find to be the absolute easiest, whether you're doing manual entry or you're doing working with a third party. Okay. And what is that? And you may or may not be able to do this, but bear with me. Okay. Uh, my idea is that you would use an advance bill. The advance bill is just saying a deposit. Give me money up front so that I can basically pay my vendors in the future. Whatever those vendor invoices are, that's what I'm going to recognize to revenue. And again, and pay my vendors. But I've already got the money. Well, what's the difference between that and pre-billing the order? Okay, pre-billing the order takes a little more conscious effort from us, right? If I pre-billed the order, then that actually is income at that point in time, right? We're going to make some expense entries as well on that client invoice. Then when the vendor invoice comes in, especially with third party, we're going to get revision lines. Those revision lines need to be billed out first before I can bring in the vendor invoices, or we get duplication of available amount to bill. Okay. So that means now you have to tell your media people, don't sync. We're not done with billing. Once you're done with, or don't sync vendor invoices, right? Yeah, right. Don't sync the vendor invoices because I have to get those revision lines. You're always syncing those orders, sync the orders, because the revision lines will automatically come in, but we definitely need to get those billed out. So again, we have to separate the vendor invoices from the billing period. Have to get the billing period in first. Then you can say, okay, now you can bring the vendor invoices across. Okay. So that works. But the difference is, mine is advance bill. You still have the money. It is not sitting as income. You may or may not be able to do that, but again, it's not income yet. Uh, and your media buyers are just syncing. They get a vendor invoice, they sync it. If they get orders, they sync it, right? Just coming across all the time. The only thing you're recognizing to revenue and looking at is the vendor invoices, right? And recognizing that to revenue at that point in time. If the vendor invoice doesn't come in, the order is still open. So that's a way that you would track that. Okay. But what I'm going to go through right now, sorry, that was very fast, uh, is I'm going to go through how do I do that process. Okay. So as I said to begin with, I'm going to create an estimate, which gives me that budget, right? So within the project, I'm going to come into the billing cycle and I'm going to say, I'm going to go create an advance bill. And how am I going to create this advance bill? So we can actually give detail to the client, right? I'm going to say, do it by service and item. That got my media. These are the items. This is the plan. Does that make sense? Then I'm going to say, I just need to get a percentage of that at this point in time. So I'm going to say 10%. And when I do 10%, it's going to take 10%. It's basically going to bill $1,000 out of the 10, right? If I need to change that to something different, I only want to bill 600 or whatever, but I'm going to use this, just the $1,000 at a time. Probably that, again, I tried to keep the numbers equal. So the idea is I'm going to go ahead and create this advance bill, right? For that percentage. It's still going to give me the detail that I can print out. So I'll just go ahead and create this invoice. Okay, so here's my advance bill, right? If I print this out, again, it may look ugly because I don't have the right one, but here it comes to printing. The client gets to see it. Hey, I'm going to be buying X amount of cable, X amount of, X amount of interactive, X amount of digital, X amount of out of home. Okay. I can add stuff to this. Of course, there's descriptions and things like that if I need to add more information either to here or here, right? Whatever I need to do. Does that part make sense? Okay. So I got the detail, but all of it, as you can see, is booking to my bucket of money to use. So in reality, I have a bucket of $4,000 to move around because, 1 month I may have more cable or I decide to move things from cable to interactive. I decide to move digital into out of home, whatever those moves are, and I get vendor invoices accordingly. Then I'm just more targeting this 4,000 and pulling in and having this 4,000 pay for that. But for the client's perspective, they can see what is our plan and the values of the plan and that can move forward. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is because this is kind of like a monthly thing for them, right? I'm breaking it down for them in payments. I now can come in and say, create a schedule. So in this schedule, I'm going to say, okay, how often do I need this? I need it monthly, right? Uh, I created this on the 14th, so the next time it's going to need to be created would be 2/1, 2/14, 2/10. Again, I'm kind of picking what is the next anniversary in this case, again, based upon your billing schedule or what. Some people do that. So it's kind of, will always be kind of in the middle of the week. The reminder option, I always set it to automatically create. I want this to be in my list of invoices to print and send. Okay. Number remaining. Well, how much is the contract for? Right. And so I've already created one. It's a yearly contract. So I need 11 more. Make sense? Okay. I'm not worried about reminders days in advance. I don't need that because it'll automatically create. It'll be in my billing location. Okay. The next set is, do I need to create as approved? Okay. If you're the person creating the invoices always and sending them out, sure, you can create them as approved. But if you have somebody else that you need to send it to, or you have different settings, you may want to just bring it in as created, but then you'll submit them after review. Okay. And then active is active, just meaning this thing is ready to go. Okay. So what will happen is now on 2/5, which is the next date, you not doing anything that I'm doing next, the system will see it. Hey, it's 2/5. I have the schedule. Bam. It's going to auto generate this invoice. So this invoice you're going to be able to open up. And if you've made any changes to the plan, it's still $4,000, but maybe I change this one, this total amount. So I can edit in here. Maybe I'm changing this amount to 500 because I'm moving stuff into interactive now. And so I'm going to make that 1,500. And again, maybe I'm taking away 500 here and perhaps so 500 here, and I don't have any orders for it maybe, and it's not in my budget unless I create, oh, sorry. I meant 500, typing too much. Okay. So this is still 500 short, where I may insert a row and decide that that's going to be, I have out of home, and I may say Google AdWords. And I'm going to do 500. Now I may put in a budget for that to make that change that I'm doing, unless I say, oh, it's interactive versus digital, but maybe a Google ad I actually split out, or Meta or something like that, where I may set that up. So again, still 4,000, but I was able to quickly in this month make this change. Now, if this is going to become the new plan, right? I'm going to do 500 a month on Google and whatnot. I can always say, make this one the new primary. So next month, which will be 3/5, it'll automatically generate a carbon copy of this one as opposed to my original one. Does that make sense? Okay. So then what did that get for me? So now I've actually created, that one. I didn't generate that one yet. But again, I get that invoice in, right? That's starting to kind of tick in against it, right? And so now it's actually time to bill my transactions. Okay. So is there any questions for that? Again, I got that advanced bill in. That's my bucket, and I keep automatically having this create that bucket. It's going to show up in my billing area when I come into billing. Um, so it'll be auto-generated, and it'll be either here or it's going to be here, right? It's going to be here, right? Depending on your settings. So if it didn't come in as approved, right, it needs to be submitted. It's going to be sitting up here, right, to be submitted. Okay, I might have this grouped out. Oh, might be waiting for approval. So I have a bunch of gunk in here. Okay. Uh, Yeah, it's this one right here. So again, here's that invoice coming in, right? And so I can either, jump in it and approve it because I have that right, or if it's set to somebody else, I can then submit it to somebody else, or I can jump into it and change things that I need to change on it before I send it. But again, it automatically would show up into this slot. Okay. Now the next one is going to be, um, as part of my billing cycle, what do I do? Okay, so if you remember on my project, I wanted to make it easy for myself. So I came in, remember, to the billing options. I said, you know what? I'm going to have a billing manager. This billing manager is John, who's going to be in charge of all invoices that are generated for this particular project. I also set up a media billing group. Now, this billing group basically is lumping that billing group to send to whoever, right? But it's lumping this billing group's billing into one, not into one. It'll be grouped by client, and then it's going to be grouped by the billing group. That makes sense. Okay, so each client would have their own billing group for media if that's the way you do it. Then who's the billing manager on it? That's the person who would get it for approval of that billing amount. Okay. Okay. So when I come into my normal billing cycle, it's going to be, let's do the worksheets, right? So I come into the worksheets, and again, I want to take care of certain things, right? I may just say, go ahead and give me the media billing group. The approver is going to be the billing manager. In this case, I only am billing vendor invoices. So all I need is expenses checked off technically, right? And I'm going to go ahead and search. This is going to go out, and there's my project, right? It's saying, hey, there's $1,000 that's not billed. Remember, I hadn't approved that other vendor invoice, right? So I just had $1,000 vendor invoice. Okay. So the idea is that, yes, that's all I'm going to do. So again, I separated that out. I'm going to go ahead and say, yes, generate the worksheets. Now, again, this may have a long list. The idea is you would select all and generate based upon who the billing manager is. That's whose bell it's going to show up in. Okay. So generate the worksheets. Okay. That's going to show up in that person's bell. Here's billing worksheets to review. There it is right there. I click into it, and it's going to tell me, just as my normal billing cycle, what's going on. Okay. Oh, did I not approve that? Just a second. That one. Okay. Sorry. Forgot to approve my advance bill. Okay. Sorry about that. Let me click into this. That'll give me a. Hmm, okay, got something mucked up here. Okay. Anyway, so what I'm going to get here is again, it's going to show me the amount to bill. It's going to show me what was ordered. It's going to show again, so I can see that this is coming in for $1,000, right? The cost was 850. Do I want to bill this? It's already set to bill, and I'm going to go ahead and that can then get approved and an invoice generated. Okay. So again, this hasn't really changed anything in the as far as your billing cycle goes. Again, you just kind of separated it out before generating your worksheets. You're relying on just vendor invoices to pull in and saying who's going to be the approver. Again, using that billing group or the billing manager to kind of generate those just for that one person so that they can go ahead and work through their worksheets. Okay. Not sure why that advanced bill didn't come up. Just a second. Yeah, something turned on. Okay. I'm gonna have to take a look at that one. Um, okay. But anyway, so again, this one gets approved. Again, in my normal cycle, I'm going to go ahead and select in, this will put it into here. And again, the different review processes for the billing worksheets, right? It goes through, it's in review. I submit it or I approve it, and then it's ready to create the invoices. The idea is then I can just select them then, and then go ahead and generate the invoices, right? Worksheets to review. Um, Again, there might be, yeah, yeah, there's this project. Okay, I'll have to check on that. Usually I would have the advance bill would be sitting here for me to apply to count down off of that. I'm not sure. I must have some setting that's kind of off. So sorry about that. But again, that's the best way to kind of handle your media. Again, I bring it in, I advance bill it. I'm waiting for vendor invoices to come in. I grab those vendor invoices, recognize them to revenue. Okay. Um, Now, this would also not change anything for the people like government that you post bill, right? Because what are you doing in post billing? Well, you don't have an advance bill post billing, right? So again, I would generate the invoices just for uh, that client. It would only be picking up vendor invoices. So once again, I'm generating the invoices for that client, for the media buys, for that post billing client. And again, your workflow has not changed at all. Okay. Can we do this where I'm doing the orders? Yes, of course. Okay. So when I generate, okay, if I selected off orders and broadcast orders and I said search again, and that's going to bring up those buys, right? Um, let's see. Oh, I have the order. Sorry, let me get rid of this one. Okay. I'll do that again. Can we still do this when again, I'm picking the billing group, show me the media group. Um, there's the media group, search. There it is. Again, forgot to check out the insertion. Insertion and broadcast, usually through date is as of today when I'm generating. So show me orders. Now, again, if you wanted to, if you're pre-billing in the future, right? This I'd probably bump out to, for example, February or even into March 2nd type of thing, right? To do a broadcast month. And so now when I select it off, you can see that there's 4,500. I would do a mass select, generate the worksheet. And again, that's going to show up for my account manager. And I believe that still is me. Okay. And here it is right here. Again, it's 4,500. The difference in here is it's going to have, again, orders and insertion orders. I had that one vendor invoice that's would take. But again, we can do the pre-billing of the orders in here as well. That's absolutely fine. Okay. So you can decide what to bill. Make sense? All right. And that really is how am I tracking this? After, again, I've done all this stuff, I've done my billing, if I've generated invoices, I go back to the project. And again, there's reports. I'm showing you from the project, but as you know, there's reports that can get to this. But I'm going to start to see what are my outside costs, what is my total gross, what's my gross remaining. You can see how that's starting to change from 40,000. I have 35,500 left, right? What's left to bill? There's still 40,000 left to bill type of thing. Cause I haven't got the invoices in yet, but again, those will start to tick down. I can see the amount of advance bill if I need to. So again, all that information is still within the project and I can keep a good track on it. Okay. Okay. Um, so if there's questions, and that's what I'm going to tackle now, that's really what I had. Again, I wanted to show you that we can handle media in a number of ways. The easiest way I think to handle it, so there's no muff or gus, is really to do an advance bill with it kind of spelled out what the plan is. But then I'm just waiting for vendor invoices to recognize revenue. That makes it easier for the media buyer, makes it easy for AR, makes it easy for AP. Can we do pre-billing? Yes. Okay. You just have to make sure if you're pre-billing, then you're kind of separating the sync of the vendor invoices because we don't want a duplicate of amounts to happen. We have to make sure that those order and revision lines are pre-billed to the client before you bring in vendor invoices. So it just adds a little complexity to your buying workflow, okay, or your AR workflow, okay, to generate the invoices. Um, I think that's okay, right? Uh, and then how that invoice posts, though, it's a little bit different. I had a question. Under the pressure, media pre-bill went to an accrual account. That's exactly right. When we pre-bill an order, we have the normal AR and sales, but on that client invoice, we actually make a couple of postings, right? Kind of entries on the general ledger level. One is to the cost of goods account that is on the item that you're buying. So it looks like income and expense are in the same period. So your AGI remains correct. But obviously, to offset that COGS entry, we put in a pre-bill accrual account. We put an entry into there. So, and it's the net. So, for example, I bought at 100, it was 850, right? So we have AR of uh, 1,000, sales of 1,000, COGS 850, pre-bill accrual 850. When the vendor invoice comes in against that for 850, let's say, we'll get AP 850, COGS 850, a reversal from accrual for 850, a reversal from COGS of 850. So we make on the vendor invoice, we'll do the reversal entries. So the tail end of this is we have AR, income, COGS, AP. Does that make sense? Which would be normal if you were billing a vendor invoice. Okay. We just allow that to be pre-billed. And so those are the entries we make. Okay. Can we set the advanced build by time period? Advanced build Q1, Q. Yeah, again, the scheduling of the advanced build, you saw that is a drop-down list. You can do it weekly, daily. One of those is also quarterly, so every 3 months it would do. You could do it monthly, and if you don't want it, delete it, and it'll just the next month it'll generate again because the next month is still set. So it can keep doing it. If you don't need it, you can delete it. No harm, no foul. Okay. But yes, there is a quarterly, so every 3 months it would generate it. Or I should say, it'll generate today, 3 months later, on the fourth month, it'll generate the next one. And then, on this eighth month or seventh month, it'll generate. Okay. We have always built insertion orders that have been brought over monthly from Strata as opposed to an estimate on project. Should we not continue? Yeah, I mean, again, if you're bringing stuff over from Strata, again, that's its own thing, right? So it's bringing it over. You're doing it by the insertion order. You'd still be connecting it to a project. That's just for reporting purposes. But um, again, if you're pre-billing those insertion orders, yeah, there's no difference, right? You're just pre-billing those orders. Okay. I was just showing you using the estimate for your buy. Of course, it's a project. So then you're always getting this budget versus actual, right? So everybody can see where are you budget versus actual. That's why you should always have an estimate. Now, again, to create that advanced bill, I just wanted to make it easy for you to create the advanced bill. So again, if you're going to do that, it's like do it by item because I always hear the client say, I want a little bit of detail what the plan is. They don't really care if it went with KXZY or KAW1, right? They don't care about that per se. They may, but that would be the tear sheet that you can give them a report on. We're just saying we're going to buy radio, TV, online, Google, whatever it is that we're going to buy in bulk amounts. Okay. When do you build the order and recognize the revenue? So again, the concept of advance bill and then waiting for the vendor invoice, that's when you'd be recognizing the revenues when the vendor invoice comes in. So you the vendor invoice for December are probably just now getting in, right? And there probably won't may even be a couple of weeks out from here. So the idea is until that vendor invoice comes in, I don't recognize the revenue for it. And then I can quickly pay my vendors in 30 days or whatever your terms are with them because the client has already paid that, right? Now, if you're pre-billing the orders, then the income is recognized immediately, right? We just are going to make accrual entries for the expense side, waiting for the vendor invoice to reverse those out. Okay. Okay. If you do an advance bill that includes commission, after the vendor bill is paid, do you need to realize the revenue for the commission? Well, remember, when you're billing the vendor invoice to create the revenue, that should be the gross amount, which would normally include that uh, sorry, would include that commission amount, right? So the vendor invoice came in, there's your expense side. You're going to income it. So again, the vendor invoice came in for 850. You bill that to a client for 1,000. So the AGI would be that 15%. That makes sense. The $150 in AGI is what you'd be recognizing, which would equal the commission. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. As far as recording, I believe registrants will get a link to saying, hey, the uh, the video is ready for you. If you don't, we always upload them into the help guide, a link to them under webinars. We also have a YouTube channel for our webinar. So again, if you subscribe to that YouTube channel, you'll see when new entries are made. It was asked if there's a transcript to it. I'm not sure how we do deal with the transcripts. I know it's copying every word where, it's, as you know, Zoom has AI on it. So it creates a fun transcript. We'll have all the gunk in there. I don't know if we make that available or not, but if you send a note to support at workamajig.com and say, hey, Dave said he could send me a transcript, I'd be happy. If it's not available, I'll give it to you. Okay, I'll copy it out and give it to you. Okay. All right. And that appears to be everything. Okay, I think I had any questions. Any more questions? Okay. Again, if you have any support at workamajig.com, you can say, send this to Dave and that's, or David, either way, that's absolutely fine. Again, if you have any further questions or need further training, again, if you're using third party, we definitely recommend you get further training. Again, just ask for that at support at workamajig.com. Thank you guys very much for attending. I hope this was helpful to you. Again, any further questions, do not hesitate to ask. Happy to answer any of those questions. Have a great rest of the week and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye now.